Hauss sports all plays. Yeah. Hauss sports all plays. Hauss sports all plays. 365, we making up plays. We talking the game, get you to the days. We're high in the court, the dime in the lane. Variety topics, living the same. All presentation, sports information. Hitting the airways, taking the nation. All sport, all plays, they working your faces. Grace at the field, so tie the laces. Hauss sports all plays.
That'd be absolutely devastating.
This is Joey Owens' show. They've been trying to get me on this broadcast forever, and this is the worst damn broadcast I've ever been on. So you all can kiss my ass while I win this match.
All right, welcome to G.W.R. Gonzo's Wrestling Room, Tuesday, March 12th, 2024. I'm Chris Gonzalez, joined by Tony Gonzalez. Joined by Tony Gonzalez and also joined by Marcus Fine, like always. And then tonight we have special guest, pro wrestler Marc Hauss, joining us. How's it going?
How you guys doing today? Thank you for having me on.
No problem. Looking forward to it. We'll go ahead and get started. Marcus, you want to start things off?
First thing I want to say is if Jared Bird is watching this, if we can get a guy from Alaska on here on time, we ought to be able to get you on sometime through the broadcast.
I talked to him last night. He was pretty frustrated. I think he was about ready to break his phone. His phone was the problem. So I think we got things worked out for Thursday. I think he's just going to come in the studio. So
that's probably
we'll see.
For good. All right. Okay, first off, congratulations on the baby. What is it? A boy, girl?
Yep, got a baby boy, Hunter House. I was trying for Hurst for the middle name, didn't work out. So we got 2 H's out of 3.
Try.
March 3rd.
March 3rd, yep.
Almost 10 days. Very good. Congratulations.
Yeah, he's a tank. Thank you very much.
Let everybody know where you're at.
Currently, I am in North Pole, Alaska, which is right outside of Fairbanks. So, I'm a hop, skip, and a jump down from Santa Claus's house, legitimately. So it's kind of cool.
What's your weather like right now?
Let's take a look. We are at 5 degrees, feels like negative 13, and we're 4 hours back from you. So it's still 3 o'clock here.
Very good.
I wouldn't survive.
It's a little cold. I mean, I've gotten down to, since I've been here, I've gotten down to negative 35. Negative 35. So it's a little cold.
What's the snow like?
It's not too bad. I mean, here, hold on. Let's see if we can do this. Let's see if we can. Oh, we can't do it. So we're gonna try to turn it around real quick so you guys can see. I'm not gonna be able to see because I'm using front camera, but there you go.
Oh, that ain't bad.
No, it's just frozen and cold. The good thing is that there's no humidity, so it's very dry. It's not wet snow like it is there, so it doesn't stick and it's not icy like it is in Indy. I mean, but then again, I would want to have the Indy be very icy because your potholes go down like 17 feet. So anything to cover over those potholes to save my car.
Yeah,
that's point.
True. You ought to be at Betsy. That's where those guys are at.
Yeah.
Okay. Well,
so I'll take the cold all day.
All right. What got you interested in pro wrestling? When did this dream of yours all begin?
I was actually late to the game. So a lot of people, you'll hear a lot of the people I've talked to, it's 4, 5, 6. I mean, I was 13 when I first started, but it was also one of those things where I was interested in wrestling at a very young age. I just never could watch it. My parents never wanted me to watch it because they were afraid that I was going to do it because I was very energetic and I loved that stuff. And for me, I grew up with divorced parents. They got divorced before I was a year old. So I always grew up with 2 sets of parents, and pro wrestling was kind of one of those things that gave me the definitive good versus definitive bad. So back in the day, I mean, it's not so much now, everything's blurred lines, but you had you had Hogan. Hogan was that definitive good guy, and then you had the definitive bad guys. So it kind of taught me right from wrong as a kid, as weird as that is, being on the road all the time, because I was traveling 3 hours back and forth from where I'm from in upstate New York, Rochester to Binghamton. It's about a 3.5 hour drive. I was doing that every other weekend from kid to adult. So everything was always changing between the two families. And so having that constant of pro wrestling. And then I just remember my 13th birthday party, my mom let me have a sleepover. I stayed up all night. And I just remember that I watched at like 3 o'clock in the morning. I watched on TNN. I watched ECW, and there was, I think it was Rhino and Spike Dudley versus the Dudleys in the Hammerstein Ballroom, and one of their just random shows. And I was hooked, and I became that kid that wore the t-shirts every day, watched it every day, and did nothing but eat, sleep, and breathe pro wrestling. And, my parents are right. They should have tried a little harder to stop me from wrestling, because 21 years later, I'm still doing it.
How did your training come about?
Oh, my training. It was, what was that?
And you trained up in New York then, right?
Yeah, I trained up in New York, but I didn't have a very traditional upbringing with training. Before my friends and I went to college, we had found a guy that he used this old low boy boxing ring, and he charged us $20 a person for a half an hour of training to let us do our backyard wrestling company in a ring. And it was terrible. And then one of the guys was like, "Oh, you've got some chops. You should probably stick around." And I just remember it was, his name was Tiger Smith, and nobody knows him because, to be honest with you, he's not great. He still kind of pops around here and there, but I got to give him credit for at least getting me the opportunity to get in the ring. But he started to train me a little bit. I learned basics, and I realized all of it was wrong, and then kind of moved on from him. I cut my teeth at a place called NWA Upstate, which is now UPW. And they're out of Rochester, and it was run by a guy named Mike Rosario. So I trained through there. And I remember I came up because there was another backyard wrestling company, and that other one was had Colin Delaney and Luke Harper, Brody Lee. Those guys were in the other backyard company, and they came up in a company called RCW. So that's where I started, was when, if you watch the WWF or WWE documentary of Brody, they show the RCW. That's where I started. So I was doing stuff with him, coming up to the ranks. Obviously, he blew way past me, but I came up with those type of guys, and my training really took off when I went to this place called Pier 6 Wrestling, and there was 2 trainers there, Rick Matrix and this guy named Frank the Tank Burlington, and they kind of had to step away, and they were going to close this company down, and they go, "Who wants to train?" And I had no right training, but I said, I'll do it because I needed a place to train. And that's where I started going, is that I was kind of known in the areas. I was the guy who would get in the car and drive everywhere. I mean, thousands of miles, and anything within 500 miles or less. If there was a seminar, I'd spend money on it. So I was never really fully trained by one person. I like to think of myself as the guy that I went on the road and I learned from everybody, which is why my style isn't there's not a specific style. I'm able to kind of mold to any type of match, because I went out and did hundreds and hundreds of seminars and learned from everybody I could. And then even now, still to this day, if there's seminars, people I can pick brains with, anything, I will go and ask them questions and learn something, because there's always something to learn in pro wrestling, and to be as well-rounded as possible, I think, in this day and age, is the best thing you can do.
Any of the big name seminars you went to?
I could go through them for days. Ted DiBiase, Claudio, Chris Hero, or Cesaro, sorry. Chris Hero, Antonio Thomas back in the day, Hurricane, Johnny Gargano, Ricochet. I mean, I literally could do this for days. If you wanted me to go back and give you a comprehensive list, it's pages long. I mean, you name it, I've probably done a seminar with them over the 20 years.
Do you have a favorite one?
I don't, because there's so many good ones. I mean, one of them that I really enjoyed, Steve Carino did one, but it was all textbook. It was all sitting down and going through psychology. I love that a lot. I really took to Brutal Bob Evans and his style. I mean, I've had seminars where one of the people that I had a seminar with and then hadn't talked to him for like 10 years and then met him up in India was Rip Rogers. I did one with him and his style is really good. I mean, I don't really have a favorite one because there's so many different. I take something away from every single person. Like when I did one with Kevin Kelly, I took away the promo skills. Steve Carino was the psychology. Brutal Bob Evans was how to market yourself. Rip Rogers was the old school psychology. I did one with Hurricane where it was more gimmick. I did one with, I mean, I know, and it's not me trying to name drop. It's just there's so many of them, and there was something different about each one that I really don't have a favorite because everybody brought something different to the table. And if you can't take something from everybody and find a favorite in everything, I don't feel like you're doing it right in pro wrestling because then you're narrowing yourself down. I mean, for God's sakes, I worked Elgin years and years ago in Canada and saw him at WCWO, and it was like we hadn't skipped a beat, but he was even sitting down with me during the entire time of being there, and he taught me a bunch of things when we sat down and just talked after years and years of doing this. So, no, I don't really have a favorite, but I have a ton of fond memories from a lot of people.
Go ahead, Tony.
Oh, go ahead, Marcus. I just.
Oh no, that was good. All right. So, let's see. What states? How many different states have you worked in now?
Oh man,
Across country since you've been to Canada. So
I've been all over Canada. I've done Germany. I've done Mexico. I've done, I don't know, New York, Maine, Vermont, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, Washington, D.C., Kentucky. I mean, Florida. I mean, you can go on and on and on. I've probably done 15 states, 10, 15 states probably that I can think of. And it's probably just going to branch out more here, more West Coast once I get back down into the States, the lower 48.
Well, Kelly and I still laugh because we thought you were one of the trainees, especially when you showed up in rep here and was refereeing with that. And then you come up and say, I'm a 20-year veteran. It's like, you've got to be kidding me.
Yeah, I tend not to flaunt that stuff. I just kind of go in and let my work speak for itself. And to be honest with you, the only reason I was reffing and doing that stuff is that there was a 6-day stretch where I was on match 5 of 6. I was supposed to work the Patriot the next day. And I took a second rope DDT or the guy jumped off for a DDT in Canada for this company called Crossfire Wrestling. And I was wrestling with a guy named Mike Skyros that I've wrestled a bunch of times. And it was a freak accident. I ended up falling or bracing and bumping on my forearms, and I blew out 2 of my 3 tricep heads and broke off a $50 size piece of my elbow and didn't realize it. Drove home on it, went to the hospital. I'm like, yeah, I don't know how your arm is functioning. I couldn't move. And I had surgery, and when I got to Indianapolis and started coming around WCWO, I was only 6 weeks out of surgery. So that whole entire time that you've known me, I was basically on the very fresh new rehab of my arm, and I was trying to train the school and help out with one arm.
Now that you brought that up, how did you come about coming to Indy? And I heard Reggie Edwards' interview. Tell us the story about the dub, because that stuff kills me, how you walked in the back door like you did. So tell us how you got to Indianapolis, and then tell everybody how you just kind of barged in the back door. But
yeah, so the mother of Hunter, she's a traveling x-ray tech, and she wanted to go to Indianapolis for her next contract. And so at the time I was like, sweet, I'm getting up, I'm going, we're having a kid, let's go, see ya. So I moved out to Indy, and I didn't know of any wrestling companies, and I was like, all right, well, I'm healing, I might as well go and see the scene. I'd love to get to know people, make some friends. And I searched on Facebook and online, and there wasn't much, and the only thing that came up was WCWO. So I went down. At the time I lived literally a half a mile down the road. And so I drove down, and I didn't know where to go, and I saw a parking lot, so I pulled up. I ended up pulling up into the back parking lot, not knowing who the hell anybody was. Everybody's having a meeting outside. They're having a show meeting in the back. I literally walk over to them like, hey. They look at me like I'm an idiot. The whole locker room, they go, what is this guy? And I was like, hey, I'm just some wrestler from New York. Like, I messaged Joey. I don't know who Joey is, but like, is this how you get in, or are you guys having a meeting? We're having a meeting. I was like, I'm really sorry. I'll go buy a ticket. And I walked right back to my car, pulled around, sat, waited, and then sat with Joey. He met with me, and he's like, "What do you want to do here?" And I was like, "Well," I was like, "I'd love to help out with the training." I said, "Just give me one day, and I guarantee you I'll be running your school while I'm here." And he was like, "Yeah, sure you will." And everybody kind of laughed at me, and I walked in the next day, started training. Within 5 minutes, Joey goes, "Yep, he knows what he's doing. All right, let him step in and help out as much as he wants." And that was it. And then we hit the ground running, and he had faith in me within 10 minutes of meeting me after the show during one of the training sessions, realizing what I could do. That was it. But it was funny. I literally just walked in and I was like, "Hey, I'm just some dude from New York." And everybody's like, "Who the hell is this guy? Get out of here."
And we've been behind the dub and having random strange people just show up behind the dub. They probably just figured, oh, here's another one. It's like
Just some Mark that wants to come out and pretend like he's somebody special. That's the thing, because no one knew who I was, and I'm not one of those people that's gonna be like, "Here's my resume, look at me." Like you didn't know Marcus, because it's one of those things where it's like, I'll let the work speak for itself. If you like me, great. If you don't, that's fine too. But I don't need to go around and tell you and beg you to pay attention to me. If you want to watch me, great.
all right, Tony.
Okay. What was the hardest thing for you to learn in pro wrestling?
The hardest thing, psychology. I really think that was one of the hardest things, because it's one of the things that truly does lack in pro wrestling nowadays. Like, anybody can learn moves, anybody can follow a script. It's very hard for people nowadays to be able to feel a crowd. I can tell you, and like, you can ask Marcus, because you were there for that one, the last one with Joey and Will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Joey is legitimately hurt, and he and I need to go out there and figure something out. And what we did is we gave Will an opportunity, and Will, who has never had a match before, who has never, been out there other than security, went from being a student to a bona fide player within the crowd's eyes by storytelling. And if you ask Marcus, we did absolutely nothing. Nothing. And to the point where you had an entire sold out crowd on their feet walking me out the front door. And that's the last thing they all saw of me. So it's like, in a matter of 4 shows, I was able to go from somebody that nobody knew, who got over as a babyface and then was hated as a heel, and walked out the door in 4 matches. And I've watched over the past the 6 months I was there, and it's not me toot my own horn, it's just I really prided myself on it. There wasn't many matches at a lot of these shows where you would get a reaction that quickly from a nobody coming out of the woodwork. But I could be wrong, Marcus. I don't know, because I don't know the area as well as I should, but I know enough of it from 6 months. So it's one of those things where that's the hardest part, is that guys are so focused on moves nowadays, and they don't figure out that it doesn't take much. If you just want to punch, kick, and play your character right, you can get over more. It's about tapping into the emotion and less about the moves. Because the thing is, Joey and I did absolutely nothing. Couple kicks, couple punches, and 1 move, and that got over more than people that were doing flips and Canadian destroyers and pile drivers and power bombs. It didn't matter. So,
why do you think that wrestling has kind of got away from the psychology?
Social media. I really think it's social media. I think a lot of it is, we are in this unfortunate TikTok nation where everything is bite-sized. So if you're not doing crazy moves and you're not doing something that's going to get an instantaneous response, people don't have the attention span. But what I will say is that is a cop-out, because that is what people think. So people are feeding into that. And the thing is, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. People are saying, oh my God, the TikTok nation is speeding us up, so we have to do more and more and more outside of pulling a gun on somebody to be able to get them to react. When in all reality, all the fans want to be is not trained, but all the fans want to be is entertained. And if you give them a ride and you give them something to believe in, they're going to believe it. They want to suspend belief, and they want to watch you, and they want to feel something. But the thing is that all they're being fed, and this is one of the things I noticed, and I've talked to a lot of guys in Indianapolis, is that it's not just the indie scene, it's everywhere. But I go in and I watch, and it's just moves for the sake of moves. No one focuses on the crowd. No one, like, I will sit there and talk to Marcus for an entire 10-minute match and be like, and I will constantly keep poking at Marcus until Marcus gets the rest of the crowd involved. But the thing is that you have to give them a reason to believe something. Because really, I ask people all the time. I will ask you this question. I've asked every single student and every single worker that's wanted to ask me questions. Is the first thing I ask is, why is a heel a heel? I'll ask you guys this question because people get it wrong every time. Why is a heel a heel? Do you guys know?
To bring heat to the good guy.
Because they cheat.
Yeah, but why is so? I'll give you my explanation, and then maybe it'll make sense. But like, the heel is a heel because he can't out wrestle the face. That's it. He cannot physically out wrestle the face, so he has to figure out a way to cut corners, even for a second, to gain an advantage. Because the difference between a heel heat and a face shine is one single moment of a heel cutting corners. Think about it. There's no difference. It's not like the heel wakes up and goes, I want to be an a-hole all day. I mean, some guys do that, but most people who are heels are justified in what they want to do. They believe in what they're doing. It's just the crowd that they're in front of doesn't believe what they're doing, which is why you have the faces in like WWE. So back in the day with WWF, you had, what was it? Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, and it was Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, or Bret Hart and Stone Cold. I can't remember. I'm so ashamed that I can't remember. But what it was is that if you had Shawn Michaels in Canada, I think it was Shawn Michaels. Yeah, it was Shawn Michaels in Canada. He was getting booed out of the building while Bret Hart was getting cheered. And when Bret Hart was in the States, he was getting booed and Shawn Michaels was getting cheered. And it was the same content. Nothing was different. It's just a matter of the crowd didn't believe in what you were selling, which is why I could come to Indy and say, I hate Indianapolis and I love New York, and I'd get booed. But if I go to New York and say the same thing, I'd get cheered. So really, at the end of the day, with those heels, going back to it, is that people just want to believe. You got to give them something to believe in. You got to give them a reason to care by tapping into their emotions and not worrying about yourself. And the other thing too is that people don't sell anymore. That's the second part of it.
Yeah.
It's selling. No one sells and works the crowd. All I did was work the crowd. So if you watched it, I didn't do anything. In any of the matches you guys have seen, I didn't do anything. I bumped, I fed, I did a couple moves, and I pretty much worked the crowd the entire time. That was it. It's that simple. People make it harder than they need to.
Me and Tony were talking the other night about Piper. Piper turned from heel to face, and he didn't change anything he did.
Just till he went after.
Yep. I mean, the biggest thing is that he cut a couple more corners because he had to, because he told the story that he couldn't out wrestle the good guy. So he had to cut corners, which made him a heel. Because that's one of the things that kills me too. I don't know about you guys, and I would love your guys' thoughts on this, is that, do you feel that a lot of the heels nowadays cheat too much?
Yeah. Most of them do, yes.
I tell the heels this all the time. What kills me is that when you see a guy who's in heat, and what does he do? He cheats and just chokes right in front of the ref 10, 15 times in a 10-minute match. Mm-hmm. Who does that put the heat on? Is it the referee or the heel who gets more heat?
Say the referee gets more heat.
And the referee looks like an idiot because he can't enforce the rules, which then makes everybody realize that it's a work. Which is why I always tell people, one of the best to do it, Ric Flair. Did Ric Flair have to cheat? Everybody knew he could beat the local jobbers, but what did he do? He cheated in a sly way where the referee didn't see it until the referee finally saw it. And then the crowd went nuts. And then the crowd believed that the babyface could win, even though the babyface was a nobody from random podunk town, USA. It's the same thing. If you can go out and not cheat in front of the referee and find a way to get away with it so the crowd sees it, that's the idea of getting them involved, because now the crowd's like, hey, you missed it, you missed it, you missed it. Just like that Leonardo DiCaprio, he whistles and goes, da-da-da-da. Like, it's the same thing. It's just you got to get that crowd to find something to see that the referee doesn't. Now the referee is clean. I don't know. This is the stuff that I could talk about for days. This is the stuff that I talked about with all the WCWO guys. And I'd like to think that people, I mean, I'll give the shout outs. I mean, I've worked a lot with Zay Gates over the past 6 months, with Hodari. There's a guy that's coming up that's going to be on shows very, very soon. And Will Cummings I worked with a lot. And there's a guy named Mike Noble who's going to be awesome. And those are the four guys. I mean, even Jackson Morgan I tried to help, and I think that he's a lot more focused now, and he's a lot more sinister, and he's a lot less distracted. Where, I mean, he just won gold. He is focused. So hopefully you see a little bit of that psychology and a little bit of that difference in those type of people, because those are the people that I kind of latched on to. But that's kind of where I stand with a lot of that.
Best piece of advice that you received in the wrestling business?
Slow down.
Slow down. I've heard, we hear that a lot.
Yep. If you feel you're going too slow, slow down. I mean, little other pieces of advice is, I always ask people all the time, and this is kind of one of those things, is that, does this make sense if it was a real fight? I ask people all the time because they do moves and all these sequences. Does that make sense? Would you do that in real life? Would you do this? I mean, even down to the mannerisms, your facial expressions, everything. Would you do it? No. Well, then why are you doing it? So, I mean, those are two big ones. Two big ones all the time that I press over and over. I'm sorry, go ahead.
What do you love about the business, and what do you dislike about the business?
I love everything about the business. I can't really pinpoint one thing. I love the camaraderie behind the scenes. I love being able to get emotion out of people. I love being able to see the sense of wonder in children. I mean, I love doing it still to this day, and because I loved what it did for me and what it made, how it gave me something to believe in and look up to when I was a kid, and I want to be that same person. I never made it big, but I have a lot of experience and a lot of connections of people that I've made it big that I'm very proud of. But the reason I still do it at 38, beaten up and broken, is that I can have simple matches and still make friends with kids. I mean, I was only in Indy for 6 months, and I only did stuff really for like 7 shows. But in those 7 shows and in those 6 months, I've made lifetime friends and kids that still talk to me. I mean, I still call up friends of mine, and fans will still message me with their kids, and I talk to them on video calls. I don't care. Like, it doesn't bother me. I love connecting with people. It's just the camaraderie and being able to help people escape life for a little while, and being able to help motivate people to do whatever they want. Because I did it. I was a nobody, and I made it in pro wrestling. So anybody can. The things that I dislike about it nowadays is, I dislike that the wrestlers themselves, it's almost like, because it's been let out of the bag that it's entertainment, they've almost made wrestling a joke of itself, where it's almost satire, where they're like, well, if we make fun of it before everybody else, then no one can hurt our feelings. And instead of toughening up and just realizing, like, people are going to have their opinions, they're going to say what they want, continue to show kayfabe and continue to move forward as if everything is still what it was, and let people suspend their disbelief. And if they don't want to come along for the ride, that's on them. That's not on you. But we've gotten to a point nowadays that we're so we're desperate to make money, that the product itself, because we're pushing people that aren't trained, that don't take this seriously, that look at it as fake, that basically should be fans, we're diluting the talent pool to give people like you guys. Everybody's spending money. You guys are spending money on tickets, and you guys aren't getting your money's worth. I ask students all the time, I say, like, a ticket at the Dub, $12. Are you worth $12? If they say yes, I walk away from them. I never help them again. I'm not worth $12. I'm worth some, but I'm not worth $12. I always have room to improve. And I think nowadays is that wrestling companies are giving you hot garbage and stealing money of indies, because you guys deserve to have the best available, the best talent. And there's some people, to be honest with you, is that the wrestling business is hard to get into. It's not like everybody who plays football gets into the NFL. Everybody who decides they want to be a wrestler shouldn't be on shows. Period.
I've heard that.
There's refereeing. Yeah. There's refereeing. There's production. There's lots of things you can do to be in the wrestling world. I was lucky enough and fortunate enough that I just worked really, really hard, and I was able to make it in wrestling. But there's certain people, there's certain people in the area that I've watched that, I'm not naming names, but there's people that really shouldn't be wrestling, and they should be doing other things because they have value, just not believable as wrestlers. And it's a waste of your guys' money to spend on tickets to get 2 quality matches, or there's 6 iffy matches that are of people that have friends of friends that can sell tickets. It doesn't help the business. But that's just me.
Best decision in your career and worst decision in your career.
Best decision in my career. I mean, it's kind of one and the same. The best decision in my career was there was a local company that I gave everything to, and I was super loyal to them. And it kind of goes both ways. I had the opportunity to go and like train at ROH and do all this other stuff, and I was too afraid to leave because I was training schools, and I had loyalty to my local school. And I didn't want to leave because I knew if I left, I felt that these students would not get the proper training and not get the best chance possible. So I felt guilt leaving. So I ended up staying. That was one of the worst decisions for me personally because I had so many opportunities to really, and I probably could have made it to a level. I mean, Ring of Honor itself was offering me to go down and train at the school and do all the ring crew and help out and work my way up, like the guys like Shaheem Ali and LSG and Will Ferreira at the time. I would have been all in the same class as those guys, and I turned it down to stay local to help the students. But the best thing I ever did, honestly, was when I got to a point where I wanted to break away from that. I broke away and went out and did seminars, and as scary as it was, I took every chance imaginable by myself. There was many weekends where I drove by myself, and especially in the local area. I mean, there was a lot of times where there's going to be a lot of people that don't like you, and there's a ton of people that don't like me and thought that at the time I had an ego and this and this and this and whatever. I could care less. I just kept my nose down. I was grinding, and I got on the road, and I went to every seminar, made every connection, and did everything I could. So the best thing for me was just to get on the road and go anywhere and everywhere, regardless of pay, regardless of situation, regardless of spot. I mean, I would drive 500 miles to go take a battle royal spot in a really crappy company because they had a seminar with a guy that was reputable, and I'd make a contact with him and then do this, and it got to the point where when you're on the East Coast, you would see my name everywhere, regardless. It wasn't the best matches sometimes, it wasn't the worst, but I learned from every single one of those. So that's the best and worst.
Okay. Marcus?
Well, I don't know if you know, but Will Cummings is now pretty active on the roster. He's working.
Yeah, I'm keeping an eye out. Yeah.
So he's doing good. He's doing good.
Yeah, he had a good match with Kenneth James there in Lebanon a couple weeks ago.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah, it was pretty good. I watched it because what I end up doing now, to be very honest with you, is I tell anybody that I cross paths with, send me your matches. I'll send you feedback, and I send, KJ will send along stuff, and Hodari and all those guys, and Jackson Morgan, like I said, they'll send matches, and I'll send back pages of feedback. So it's nice for me to be able to watch that stuff and stay involved. So I've actually, as funny as it is, being up in Alaska, I'm watching most every show, and a lot of the times too is that when you guys stream your shows and whatnot, I'm there lurking in the background watching.
Go ahead, Chris.
Oh, go ahead, Marcus.
Well, no, if you got something, say it, because I got mine wrote down.
Oh, I was just going to say that Hodari and Zay both have been on fire around here as of late.
Yeah, they took a step back, and they've listened to everything I had to say because I'm trying to help build them up. I mean, the biggest thing with Zay is that he's finally slowing down and really feeling comfortable in that heel character, and Hodari is really taking control and command of his own destiny, and he's very confident and sure of himself now. When you watch those matches, there is no hesitation whatsoever, and they're doing a great job. They're just fantastic. Even Jackson, like when Jackson and I would sit and talk and go through it, I mean, I don't know if you guys see it, but he is on a mission. There is no more wiggle room for play. He comes out and he wants to destroy people, and that is it.
Yep,
I agree.
So
I don't know if you've answered this, but what is your best advice you've given people? Is it slow down? Is that what you said, or do you have other things you make sure you tell everybody?
I mean, I got a bunch of them, to be honest with you. throw the question up with all the WCWO guys and just see what their reaction is, because I don't know. I've given so many little nuggets, but what I would challenge you guys, go and ask all the WCWO guys, and each one of them probably will have one of them, and there'll probably be something that is standard across the board that I've told them a million times. I'm curious what they think because they're the ones who take the advice and take it to heart. So I'm curious what they think. If you guys want to do that, I guarantee you they'll all give you an answer.
All right.
I'll have to do that. When you was in Indianapolis, did you work with any other promotions besides WCWO?
I just did a battle royal with Buck, WPW. Other than that, I did not because it was so late in the game that I didn't have a chance to really get out there. And I tried with a couple companies. FEW called me last minute and I couldn't do it. And then I went to a place called EPW and they didn't know who I was because I didn't go out. I came along and Cecil Cerveza put a good word in for me, but the promoter didn't know who I was and decided that he wanted to go a different direction. So he, instead of using me, he used a student of his to wrestle a match because he didn't realize. So I got in there and helped roll around with students ahead of time. And that was that. I guess there was a couple people in that locker room, to be very honest with you, that I guess I rubbed them the wrong way because they didn't know who I was. And they were basically like, who the hell is this guy coming in and trying to show people things? And those people, I guess, had enough of a say that they didn't want me on the show. So I sat back and gave my advice and helped out the guys that wanted help, but met a lot of nice people.
All right, I'm looking at my paperwork.
And I have the question here, Kelly, I can't, it's not you or Marcus. I enjoy your hugs better.
He hates us both.
But Kelly, I enjoy your hugs better. I'll tell you that much.
I ain't gonna argue with that. Who's been your favorite opponent to date?
Oh man, I don't know. The one I always went back to because I always had fun working with him is Maximo Suave. It's funny because now he's over in OVW, but him and I came up and worked a bunch in Rochester. I've enjoyed working with him. I mean, I had a hell of a time with Joey. I mean, that was so much fun. I mean, it was a whole lot of nothing, but it was so much fun. But that's the thing though, is that I feel bad because people always ask me like favorite and least favorite. There's not many things that are my favorite. It's one of those things where there's so many different like types of matches and types of people and types of personalities and emotions and feelings. Like I positively love 99.9% of my career where I don't really have favorites. Because I could work a guy 50 times and consider my favorite because I work him so much. But then like Joey, I had 6 minutes of him and it was one of my favorite that I've had for years. But it's just, everyone is different. I know it's a really lame answer and it's a very PC answer, but it's the truth for me. I don't have favorites because I'm fortunate and lucky and blessed that I got to work all of these people for different reasons.
No, it's just like wrestling federations. Kelly and I, of course, get around, and when I brought Chris and Tony into this one federation, I said, now this isn't going to be like what you're used to. They have their own style. You will enjoy it, but it is different from what you've seen. So I'm assuming the opponents are the same as wrestling organizations. Everybody has something different to offer. It's not like everybody else. So
everybody. And I mean, you have different, like there's different I mean, think about it just for the sake of Elgin. I wrestled Elgin. It was me. I don't remember. It was me and this guy named Rick Matrix. Or no, it was a tag match. I can't remember exactly who was on what side. I think it was me and this guy named Rick Matrix versus Sean Spears and Elgin in Canada. And I remember just like going out there and having a hell of a time, and we just laughed about it, had a great match, and then, reminisced 10 years later, 12 years later, when I saw him in the locker room when he came in, he goes, Mark, right? And I was like, yeah, dude, I haven't seen you in a while. So it's like things like that where you have those matches that you can reminisce, where it's like, I know if I come back 10 years from now, you'd be like, hey, Joey. And we'd reminisce about that match. Or, Maximo I haven't seen in a couple of years because he went off to do OVW, which I'm super proud of him and happy that he went and made it. Because you can see him. He's one of the guys that's on the Netflix series. And him and I had bangers in matches, but going back and looking at now, probably weren't bangers now, but were great back then when we were just getting started. So different places in your life, different reasons people come in.
Mm-hmm. Well, then I'll ask you: do you have a favorite match? I know you just said that you don't pick favorites, or do you have a favorite style of match you like working?
At this point in my career, I like doing a little bit more comedy, and I don't mean like straight up comedy where it's ridiculous. I mean like, even the Cecil and I match of Lebanon.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there was a little bit of comedy. Yeah, it's a little bit of comedy, but it was enough crowd work. So I like to have a little bit slower paced match. It tells a very, very, very simple story because a lot of guys don't do that. So me doing that allows the crowd a chance to take a deep breath and see something different. I loved having technical wrestling or technical matches. I was a huge fan of like a lot of the European style technical wrestling. So I prided myself on that for a while. I also, there was a guy, Sean Carr, we wrestled in this place called IWF, and I had been jerked around match after match and finally had a chance where they were working a storyline towards the belt, and I had lost and lost and lost, but I was getting screwed over, and then they basically gave me the belt because something happened with one of the workers. They gave me the belt, and I legitimately cut a promo, and I said, I'm not accepting this. And the promoter didn't know. I said, I'm not accepting this. I'm going to wrestle Sean, and we're going to have it for the title. And so I came out with the belt, threw it down, had a really good match with him, and it was one of my favorites because the crowd reaction was there. The huge pop at the end when I won, and I finally got over the hump because I finally outsmarted everybody and won. That was probably one of the premier matches in my mind that I can think of that really was a huge reaction for me.
No, bringing up your Lebanon match, you getting out of the ring and tormenting Casey, Will's fiance. Then you get back in the ring, and then you.
She had no idea it was coming either. She got a little nervous. She's like, "What the hell, man?" And I was like, "Sorry."
And then you turned around and went back at her. It's like,
yep.
So let's see. Is there anybody you would like to wrestle? Anytime, anywhere, anybody?
I'm really sad because there was one person. He was the two guys that so I've always loved Rick Rude, but the two guys that I loved watching when I first got into wrestling was Gangrel and Goldust. I know they're weird, but they were great storytellers, and I loved watching Goldust do his thing, and I just was drawn to Gangrel. There was a point where I was supposed to work Goldust, and they went back to the Fed, so that was out of the question. And I found out is that the week after I had gotten hurt, I was supposed to wrestle Gangrel. And I was going to be up at this place called Excite Wrestling in New York. It was going to be end of July this year or last year. I was supposed to work them. It was all set up. I was cutting promos about being my childhood hero, and the promoter was going to let me beat my childhood hero. I said, this is the only thing I wanted out of 21 years. I've never even met him, and I always wanted to meet him. Every show he was on, I couldn't make it, so I never met him. I always wanted to work him. I was supposed to work him the week after I had surgery. And then he pulled out last minute because I wasn't going to be on the show. And I never got a chance to meet him or wrestle him. And it broke my heart.
Well, we commentated a match with Gangrel this past year. So,
yeah.
If you talk to Mike, he might have to work out. I don't know. I'm not.
What was that? October.
Last October.
Hey, if you guys got any pull anywhere in Indy, I mean, I'll help. I told people, I was like, I'll help bring him in. I've wanted to meet him once, and I wanted to wrestle him. It was like the childhood dream of mine.
I'll talk to Mike King. He can do it probably. Don't quote me on that, but he has the power. So
Mike just worked with Gangrel. Gangrel was up in I think it was when he went to Canada.
Yeah.
Okay.
Not Canada. Excuse me, England.
Yeah, Mike King's got the pull. That's the guy to talk to.
Hey, whatever we can do, if we can get it going, I'm going to try. That's one of those things that's one of those like unicorns that I would hope. And like, I'm hoping that eventually next time AEW comes around, because I didn't get a chance to see him because I was able to kind of go and get a backstage just to kind of help out because I'm friends with Bird, the guy who does all the ring crew. And so I'm hoping I can go and see Dustin, but we'll see. I just want to meet. I mean, if anything, even just meeting Gangrel would be enough for me, but we'll see. Keep me in the loop, guys. Keep me in the loop. Do your work. Hashtag House versus Gangrel.
It'd be cool to meet Dustin.
Yes.
I've always been a big Dustin Rhodes. Like you said,
he's so smart. He's so smart. It's ridiculous. He knows so much.
I'll say Brody Botkins just trained with him for 3 months this past year. So
I know Brody and I have talked about it a bunch, and I'm friggin' jealous. I always talk about it and always ask how it goes and talk to Brody. Brody's another guy. He's fantastic. He's
Brody's a good
one of those
man.
guys. He's awesome. I loved hanging out with him in the back and talking to him, and he's just a quality human being. And I appreciate that he asks my opinion on things. So I appreciate that, and it goes a long way.
All right, Tony, that's all I had on my list.
Okay. Do you have a favorite wrestler that you had when you got into it?
When I first got in, I mean, as I started getting into being a wrestler, it was Rick Rude, which is why the first gimmick I had was Every Lady's Dream, Mark Krieger. I had a white suit before The Miz did, and I had tearaway pants. I had flashy glasses, said Krieger on it, and I actually had, if you go back and look, I had airbrush tights. This guy free-handed for like 12 hours, and it was one side was a 1950s pinup model, the other side was a strip club, a whole strip club. I had lips all over me, and I came out as Every Lady's Dream, and I was basically Rick Rude, man. I loved it. It was so much fun. And then I had to realize that like that's only going to get you so far. So I remember I went to a Ring of Honor camp in 2012, 2013, met Brutal Bob, and he goes, "What's your last name?" I go, "House." And he goes, "Whose house? Why are you not doing this?" And so I stopped doing the Every Lady's Dream gimmick because I was Mark Krieger at the time, because when I first got into wrestling, Krieger just means warrior in German. And I was like, I can't let people know my real name because then people are going to get creepy and weird. And this was like at 16. So I kept it. And then finally in like 2012, 2013, I went to my actual name, and, the whole Who's House thing started there. So it was before Swerve, before Paige, before all those people. I was sitting in a room, and it was Kevin Kelly, Delirious, and Brutal Bob. And they said, "No, you should be Who's House, Mark's House." And I said, "Done." And then I started using it until I walked away the first time, which I found out now that I had, I guess, broke a piece of my L2, L3, and so I was wrestling on it and didn't realize I couldn't walk, and I was in a lot of pain. Took a couple of years off, and then finally came back.
And now the big thing in AEW is whose house is it? It's Swerve's house.
It's Swerve's house. You know what? And good for him, man. He's worked super hard. I've watched him come up through the CZW, and he came to Excite a bunch of times, and that was one of my home kind of places in Binghamton, which is about 3 hours away from me, or my hometown. But no, he deserves everything. He has worked hard. He has transformed his body. He has gotten himself in a point where he will be future champion, and he will run that place because it is Swerve's house. I'll give it to him. He's fantastic.
Yeah, he's doing fantastic right now. He's one of my favorites. Do you have a move that you like to do? A favorite move that you do? Something that you enjoy doing? Something you think will look great?
Yeah, I got a couple of them. I mean, my finisher I love. It's a belly to back into a neck breaker. I know that Jay Lethal used to do one where it was a wheelbarrow, and then he would throw them up and do the back to neck breaker out of it. I do kind of the same thing without the wheelbarrow. I just set up in a belly to back, up, turn, neck breaker down. Another one I like to do is when I get thrown in the corner, I can do a double spring into a blockbuster. So I jump bottom rope, facing the rope. I turn around and hit the second rope, and then I jump out and hit a flipping neck breaker into a blockbuster. It's pretty cool. Those are kind of my two biggies. I mean, I got other go-tos, but those are the two that I enjoy doing the most.
Toughest move for you to take?
I don't know. I don't have one. That was one of those things that coming up with me and Delaney, because Colin, I don't know if you guys remember Colin Delaney, the guy who would always get beat up week after week on Raw and SmackDown. He kept having the bandages on him more and more.
Yeah, I remember.
So that spot was actually supposed to go to Brody Lee, but Brody was too big. And so Colin was called, and he came in literally from work. He walked out of his job, walked in, and that was the first match when Shelton Benjamin was the gold standard. And he sold so well that Vince kept bringing him back. And he was like, at the time, he was one of only a handful that never went through developmental. They signed him onto a contract without going to developmental. But Colin always taught me, he's like, sell. And at the time, 2012, 2013, I was only like 160, 170. I mean, I'm 210 now, but I was small. So I learned how to sell, because the thing is that people don't realize that the more you sell and the better you take heat, the better you look on your comeback. and people don't realize that. So everybody wants to look strong, and no one wants to sell, and then it doesn't help your case to get sympathy. So I learned how to sell. So there's not really much that I don't sell well, and there's not really a struggle for a move because if you watch a lot of my matches as a babyface, I don't take anything. I don't do anything. I just sell, and a couple quick hope spots, and that's about it. So I pride myself on taking moves. So nothing really is hard for me. I've taken it all.
You're a Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling and also independence, since you've worked a lot of independence.
Oh, Mount Rushmore. Okay. So, I mean, worker-wise and what changed the business. I mean, it's going to be cliche because it's a lot of the same stuff as everybody else. I mean, personal favorites, it's going to be like Gangrel, Goldust, Rick Rude, and who's another one that I really enjoy? God, why am I blanking?
I've already said 3 names we haven't had put on a Mount Rushmore yet.
Those are guys. Yeah, those are guys that like are my favorites, and I loved watching. I like Ziggler. I know it's weird, but I like watching Ziggler because he sells and sells and sells, and that's what he's good at. I mean, as far as the Mount Rushmore of pro wrestling, I mean, you have like Hogan, Stone Cold. I mean, Rock, yes, but I'd like Stone Cold over Hogan. I mean, Cena, and I don't even know. I mean, like Michaels, I mean, you want to have some workers, some non-workers, but I mean, there was so many. It's just they're all there for different reasons. Yeah. I mean, even Taker. I mean, I would swap out Michaels and Taker. They're kind of interchangeable because those are the people that had the biggest influence. Because I don't look at it. I look at it less on wrestling, which might be right, might be wrong, and I look at it more of what was beneficial for wrestling and what helped draw popularity and draw money. Because ultimately, it's a business where you want to draw money and you want to be able to have people enjoy the product, and you need to bring them in the door. So there's a lot of moving parts, but those 4, I think, help draw a ton of money to be able to get enough eyes on pro wrestling. As far as the independents go, are we looking like right now, like at this moment?
However you want to do it.
I mean, right now, how about we do this? I don't want to give you the Mount Rushmore of indies. I want to give you the Mount Rushmore of guys that I think are going to do well for themselves going forward, because I'm not as in touch as I should be. Plus, it's not fair because I am not around a lot of the scene as I was. So the guys that I feel are going to do great, I think, obviously Zay and Hodari are going to do fantastic. That's out of Indy. If we want to look more East Coast, Canada, there's a guy named Clay Wilson that is very, very good heel, and I think he's doing excellent work, and he's just getting better and better and better. And then there's a guy that I really like that has been doing great stuff. I mean, it's a toss-up. There's a Pat Sawyer. He's the champion of Excite Wrestling. He's a big, tall dude. He lost a ton of weight and got in shape, won the Excite Heavyweight Championship, and is doing an indigenous gimmick, and it's fantastic. Well, it's not really gimmick, it's really who he is. And there's another guy named the Hope Dealer, and he's in a group called the Edge of Hope, and his name is Saren Rain. Smaller guy, but very much Dolph Ziggler-esque, just amazing. But I'll give a shout out to those guys because they're all doing great things. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised you see Zay on TV in the next year or two doing squash or open card stuff. I really wouldn't.
Yeah, he's come a long way. What about this? What about a couple of names? Because you said you've been around for about 20 years or even more. Maybe a couple of names of people that, in your opinion, should have made it but never did.
Should have made it but never did. I think Brody should have made it more than he did. More than he did at the time. I mean, he was just starting to get his break in AEW, but I think he should have gotten way further into pro wrestling in WWE. I mean, he had a great run, but I think that he really could have been championship material with the way he worked. People that should have gotten further. God, God, it's tough because there's so many names, and I haven't really thought about it because there's so many names, and all the names I keep thinking of are people that made it. Sean Carr, obviously, he's one of them. He's one of those guys. He did a little bit of Ring of Honor. He did Top Prospect Tournament, but never made it big. And he is super charismatic. He knows how to work. He is phenomenal. He should have gotten farther. I know Antonio Thomas didn't make it to. He made it to WWE and did Heartthrobs and whatnot, but he is a phenomenal worker that doesn't get enough credit. I mean, people like him. There's God. Let's see if there's any out of Canada that I can think of. Psycho Mike Rollins. I mean, he's done great things for himself, but as far as like making it to the top, I haven't seen him up there. But he is amazing. There's this place that's called Super Kick. They do zombie wrestling every year. They dress guys up as zombies and they have cool production, and it's absolutely amazing, and I love it. And I was blessed to do some, but he's on there. There's a clip somewhere where go look him up, Psycho Mike or Psycho Mike Rollins, and he does this one spot where he has to work the hard cam, and it's a comedy spot, and he runs the entire sequence looking to the hard cam and doesn't look at his opponent, and does drop downs and leapfrogs and all of his selling and all of his chain wrestling. He keeps turning and rotating to keep looking at the camera. It's the funniest thing you'll ever see. But I mean, he's an in-shape dude that knows how to work, that just hasn't gotten a shot yet.
Something people would be surprised to know about you.
I don't know. I'm a huge nerd. I mean, that's not really a huge thing. I mean, I went to school for medical, so I'm pretty smart dude. Went to school for medical. Nerdy dude. Love me some board games. I don't know if there's really surprising things. But I think the medical thing, because a lot of people are like, pro wrestlers, and they don't realize. And I went to school and got a really good degree and did well for myself outside of wrestling. I always took the knowledge and the advice of find something to fall back on in case wrestling doesn't work out. I don't know. That's the hard thing, is that it's one of those things where like I'm a pretty open book and people ask me questions and I tell them. So there's not much that I'm like holding back and not telling people. So there's not really anything that would be surprising that they would know about me. You meet me and within 5 minutes, you know my story, as long as you ask.
Any hobbies?
I mean, outside of the board games, I love board games. I play a little bit of VR. Right now I've been reading a lot of books, and I mean, out here in Alaska, I love being outdoors and love that nature stuff. So I'm a very simple man. I got to the point where, especially when I found out I was going to have a son and having to move and downsize, I've gotten to the point over the past year or two where I don't have a lot of stuff anymore, and I just kind of go with the flow. So I don't really have hobbies per se. My hobbies are really just if someone wants to go do something, and I take a leap of faith and I just go do it. So I'm just experiencing a little bit of everything. I don't kind of narrow myself down to one thing. So if someone wants to do something, I go do it.
Here's a question for you. I don't know
Sure.
if you can see it.
Let me look at the comments.
That's exactly what I was wondering if you did that.
When I was in New York, yeah, I was hunting. But I want to get to that point where, yes, I want to get to the point where I'm self-sustainable on land with a couple acres and have my own, chickens and grow my own food and hunt. So, yeah, I mean, I'm dabbling in it, but it's kind of hard to do it when I'm bouncing all over the place. But when I settle down next, wherever I go, yes, I will be hunting and doing all that stuff for myself. As self-sufficient as I can be, that's the life I'm moving towards.
Being in Alaska,
So, good question.
Have you tried any ice fishing?
I have not yet. Only been here about a month and kind of had to stay close to make sure I wasn't away for babies. So I'll be doing that soon. I'll be doing that. I'm going to try to go buffalo hunting hopefully soon here. I'm definitely going dog mushing next week to see the Northern Lights. I'm going to I went to the Santa Claus house. There's an ice museum that has a little bar that serves you with fresh carved glasses. I'm going to go do that. So got a lot of stuff on the horizon. Snowmobiles, ice fishing. We're going to do all that stuff. So I'm here for another couple months, and then who knows where I'm going to be next. I'm thinking that it's going to work out that I'm going to end up in Salt Lake City, Utah. And then if I do that, it's still a pretty quick flight over to Indy. So there is a little bit of rumors and a little bit of murmurs that I might be around more than you guys think with flying out. If it all works out, then you guys will see me more than not.
Cool. Favorite food? Oh, yeah, he went out.
He didn't want to ask that question, did he?
No, he said, F you. Well, I only had 2 questions left. I don't know about Marcus. I had favorite food, favorite music.
Food what? Movie what?
Music.
Music. All right. I had a few more too.
I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. You said favorite food, and I got really excited, and I must have stopped it.
He went to get some meat.
We didn't think you liked the questions.
I don't talk about food. No, I love all food. I love a lot of Mexican food. I love sushi. I mean, I literally eat everything. And I'm one of those people that's like, you throw anything in front of me, I'll try it. But right now, I've been craving a lot more Mexican food, a little bit of Thai. That's really where it's at right now. Tacos and Thai.
Favorite music?
Currently, country. I like a little bit of everything. I'm very eclectic. I mean, if you look at my list, it is all over the place. I mean, you're looking from country to rock to rap to polka. I mean, I grew up listening. My grandmother would listen to polka. So, yeah, I got some sweet polka that you can rock to.
Okay, Marcus.
Okay, being that time of the year, is there anybody you think should go into the Hall of Fame that's not there already? The WWE Hall of Fame?
God, there's so many people. So, I mean, obviously Rude's not there, or Rude is there.
Oh, Rude is there, yeah.
Yeah. Honestly, I know it's going to sound weird, but and he's not there yet, but he needs to be. I know that Goldust, Dustin, he needs to be in there at some point.
Well, I think we will one day.
I know he's still active, but eventually he'll get there, I think. I don't know because I haven't looked at the list in a while, so I don't know who's actually there and who's not there.
It's hard to remember who's in and who's not.
It's hard. What was that?
I said it's hard to remember who's already in and who hasn't been put in yet.
That's the problem, is that they started off strong where they're adding so many people, and then they've narrowed it down because they're running out of names. But it's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, because I'd have to go back and look at the list, because it's gotten to a point where I really feel the Hall of Fame should be like 2 to 3 people max a year, because now it's becoming something where it's so watered down that it's like everybody gets to be in the Hall of Fame. And I say that, and it sounds horrible that I'm saying it like that, but it's gotten to the point where if you look at it, it's like, what was it? Certain people are in there 2 or 3 times because they're like, oh, they're part of the NWO and they're part of DX and then X-Pac. Like, it's like X-Pac, you're in here 17 times. And it's like, why don't we just do 2 people? 1 male, 1 female, maybe a special guest, call it a day, and make it mean something. Like, you really, 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 really had to have a Hall of Fame career, not just WWE, but like everywhere, to be able to get in. And it's like, someone has a good 2 years and they're like, oh, they're Hall of Fame worthy. And it's like, I understand, like, people pass away or someone retires, but it's like, Edge retires next year, he goes in. It's like, okay, I get it, but like, you got to let things marinate for a little while. I think nowadays, just like that TikTok nation, that people are so quick to pull the trigger. Like, he needs to go in now, or she needs to go in now because something happened, or they're. It's like, okay, I get it, but not everybody can be in the Hall of Fame. It's like, not everybody can be a pro wrestler. You got to make it mean a little bit more than it does sometimes. That's just me personally.
Well, I agree, because we had to talk about this a couple weeks ago about Virgil. Everyone wants Virgil.
Everybody's like, put him in there.
2 weeks ago, when he was still alive, nobody cared about Virgil. So,
by the way, did you see that he faked his age and he was actually like 12 years older than what he was?
I've seen that.
Sorry, keep going. But no, like, that everybody wants to feel good story. Put Virgil in there because he passed away. No, I and it sounds ignorant, but it's like, people pass away all the time, and it's a horrible thing. But just because someone passes away doesn't mean that person needs to be given something that they wouldn't have gotten otherwise.
Right.
Because if that's the case, then everybody who passes away deserves to go in the Hall of Fame, regardless of what they did. And that's not That's not how Hall of Fame works. That's not how it should work. And it's one of those things where like, was Virgil around for a long time? Yeah. Did he have a great career for what he was given? Yes, he did great. Is he somebody that I would look at 100 years from now or 50 years from now or 20 years from now and go, man, that Virgil, he did so much for the wrestling business? No.
No, because people ain't going to like Google Virgil to watch Virgil stuff. They're not. And I mean, I'm
No,
not
I mean,
Virgil, but nobody cared about Virgil 2 weeks ago. Why worry about him now? And I'm not trying to be
well, the thing
mean
is that
here.
people joked about him being who he was because he had his quirks and he was an interesting dude. And you know what? We all are. We all have our quirks, but he was a joke. He was a butt end of a lot of people's jokes, which, you know, unwarranted. He really didn't need to be the butt end of jokes, but it's like you go from that, and those same people that are crapping all over him are the ones that are claiming that he needs to be in the Hall of Fame. And it's like, make up your mind. And unfortunately, it needs to get to a point where business and WWE needs to understand that, like, you don't got to give the fans every last thing. There's so many people in MLB. Like, there's a lot of people that petitioning, like, oh, let Pete Rose in. Like, MLB's like, no, I'm not letting Pete Rose in. Like, this is the way it is. And, like, it is what it is. Like, it's, I don't know. It's one of those things where I feel like that they need to have the courage to be able to say no, and it's okay. Because, like, not everybody makes it. Like, I feel like I have the skill. I could have made it on TV. It didn't work out for me. Am I bitter with it? No. Am I angry at the major companies? Absolutely not. Am I angry at people that made it out of me? No. Do I deserve a Hall of Fame? No. I mean, I've had a couple companies locally in Rochester that gave me a Hall of Fame, and I was very fortunate that I was able to get into those. Do I feel like sometimes I deserved it? No. I just went out and wrestled matches like everybody else. But the fact that they believed in me, I'm very thankful for it. But if nobody else gave me a Hall of Fame to any of their companies, would I be upset? No, because, you know, I didn't stick around with a company long enough to deserve it. I wrestled everywhere. I sprinkled myself out a little bit everywhere. And as a person, I think I did all right. But, you know, I didn't stick around a company long enough, other than the ones that gave me the Hall of Fames, to help the business grow and be a huge part of their history. I guess, does that make sense?
Yep, makes sense. 'Cause you see it with all the sports now. I think all the Hall of Fames are starting to get kind of watered down because it's all, like you said, they just worry about getting people in instead of it should mean something to get in. But if you just let everybody in, it takes the value away.
Well, that's the thing, is that because we have shifted from a society based on results of what you have done and more about money and less about the actual act of what you're doing with sports, is that what's going to sell millions and millions and more dollars. We're going to let the people in, even if they might not deserve it or they haven't gotten to a level that is Hall of Fame worthy. We're going to let them in. We're going to let them in the club because everybody wants them in. It's going to sell millions of dollars more of tickets and merchandise and blah, blah, blah. If you took that out of it and said there's no monetary value and you're choosing based on stats and based on this, this, and this, all the Hall of Fames would have so many less people.
Yep.
But that's just my opinion on it. I think that it's too much of a society of everybody gets a trophy no matter what, when that's not that's not the root of sports.
All right, I got one more.
Sure, fire away.
You got any stories you would like to tell and can tell? Road stories, locker room stories, anything you could tell, and I guess don't make it too MA, but
Nothing I can tell. Not really. I mean, all my ridiculous stories, those are all ones where you guys can tell me. You guys can call me after this, and I will tell you all of them. There's some pretty ridiculous ones. I mean, I can tell you one that made me laugh. I went over to Germany, and I went with this guy named Cage. And this one's just kind of funny. I mean, it's not anything crazy. I'll tell you guys the crazy one some other time, but I'll give you this one as just a small example. But I went over to Germany, and flew out on a Thursday, was coming home on a Sunday, went with this guy named Cage. He's the one who got me booked there. That's the weekend that he was supposed to work Walter, and I ended up working Walter on a whim. But I went over, and I had never been out of the country. At this point, you need to have a visa to be able to work. You can't just go over and work. I didn't know the promoter. I didn't know anything. I just went with this guy. He was like, come on, we'll get you booked for a weekend. I was like, sweet. And there was a tournament that they had where it was a shoot tournament, eight guys from 8 different countries. So I wrestled a guy from Sweden, and I wrestled a guy from Germany. And it was very, very interesting to have the conversation. But I just remembered we got to Brussels, and we had an hour flight from there to get to where we needed to be. And he looks at me, and at this point, he had been given half of his pay. He's like, oh, my back hurts, bro. He's like, good luck. I'm going home. And he turned around and he left me in Brussels. Had no idea what I was doing. Didn't know the promoter. Didn't know anything. He goes, find the girl with red hair. Good luck. Have a nice day. And he turned around and left. And I'm in Brussels, and I have to walk through customs. And they're like, what are you doing here? I was like, visiting a friend. And I had to lie through my teeth. I had to lie through customs with all my wrestling gear. Thank God I got through. Because if I not, they probably would have arrested me and sent me back home. And then I remember when I got into the actual airport, it's not like here where when you go to an airport, each gate has its own little area. In this airport, it was every gate came out into a big central meeting area. So everybody from every flight was in one room. And I walk out, and I just start walking around. I don't see anybody. And I walk over, and there's one girl with red hair. And I go, hi. And she barely speaks English. She goes, are you Cage? And that was the guy's name. And I go, yep, I'm Cage. And she goes, okay, excellent. Come with me. Got in a random car. They took me out all day, her and her boyfriend. They took me out to go eat food and brought me to the promoter. And the promoter goes, Mark? And I was like, yeah, Marcel. And he goes, where's Cage? And I go, he went home. And he was like, are you serious? And so then they like took me around all weekend and hooked me up. But it's really funny too. Like another thing is that they don't drink their tap water because the pipes are dirty, and they drink seltzer water is like their normal water. And I just remember like it was the best spread. I went to the back, and they had fresh. It was a little town the first night that I did the tournament when, and they shut down the entire town, and they had it inside of this like really beautiful hall. It was like 700 people there. It was the entire town, and they had in the back the spread was fresh bread that was baked that morning, fresh cold cuts, fresh cheeses, fruits, vegetables, fresh chocolate that they had, and a bunch of drinks. And I just remember and fresh butter. Oh my God, fresh butter from the farm. And I just sat there and ate all day. And they're like, are you going to wrestle? I was like, no, I'm just going to eat, man. Dude. And I just remember I got back, and I was exhausted and tired. And that was actually the night. So with my elbow, so what they said is that the reason my elbow shattered in this past year is it was being held on by scar tissue. What ended up happening is I went for an elbow drop, and the guy moved, and I elbow dropped on the outside of the ring and broke my elbow. I had no idea, and it healed on its own. Actually, scar tissue put it back in place and healed it. And so I had been wrestling from 2010 till now, until last year, with an elbow that was being held on by scar tissue, and that exploded when I tore my tricep. But I had broke it that night, went to the back. It was in a lot of pain, and I was super thirsty. I walked over, and I opened up one of the bottles and started chugging, not realizing it's seltzer water because they don't drink tap water, and they don't drink like distilled water. And just 4 or 5 sips in, right through my nose, all over the floor. I felt like an idiot. Everybody laughed at me. Walter walks by, and he's like, oh, dumb idiot. I was like, God, thanks, man. So the next day I get to Mad Wrestling Association. That's when I wrestled Walter, and they actually created a little area, and they said for American only. And it was just me. And they had a full spread of my own food. They had distilled water instead of carbonated water. And they thought it was hilarious. And they just pulled a rib on me, and they just made my own table of food to make sure it was Americanized. And I was thinking, you guys are the worst. But it was fun. And then I just remember like they drove me on the Autobahn the next day. They're like, do you want breakfast? And so they wanted to bring me to the red light district to have breakfast to send me off. And it was the weirdest thing. It was like 4 o'clock in the morning getting served like outside of brothels, like just eating breakfast and then being sent to the airport. It's very weird. But no, it was that's one of them. But I'll tell you guys some more stories when you guys want to outside of this.
That's good.
Is there a big difference in wrestling like in other countries compared to like wrestling here in the States?
At the time, yeah. I mean, Germany was a lot more. It was at the time. It was a lot more strong style. A lot less gimmicky, and the crowd was a lot quieter and more respectful. And so they would respond to different things. So it's like you would do a big move and they would cheer, but they wouldn't cheer like they would here. And there's not a lot of heckling. It's more of they're enjoying the show, which was very interesting at the time. And then when I went to Mexico, crazy. I mean, I remember wrestling. I wrestled a 10-man tag, and actually it was one of those things. They have like a sports center. I'll have to send it to you guys, but they have like a sports center there that's like their big thing that they watch for a while. And I was wrestling. I went down there and tagged up and did stuff with this guy named Lowrider, and then did a bunch of matches with this guy named Articos and Lancelot, which are Super Crazy's nephews. And I ended up somehow at Super Crazy's house one night and just spent the night. I had no idea. But we went there, and they had a 10-man tag, and we wrestled at like 9 o'clock at night with spotlights on in front of a church with like 500 people standing all the way up to the apron, just going nuts, drunk, just going nuts. And that was like, I think it was a match. I think Ricky Marvin was in it too at the time. But I remember I took the guy set me up for an outsider's edge, and he threw me up. So it was almost like an outsider's edge, last ride, and then came down and powerbombed me in the middle of my back on his knee. And it ended up getting number 1 on the top 10 moves of Lucha Libre for the day. The entire country saw it, and it was a huge deal. But working the left is a little different. Getting in and doing everything they do is rolls because their mat is so hard, and they don't have the spring. So everything is rolls. Everything is super cardio based. Working the left is really weird. And just the language barrier. I remember I went into practice one day and we did a bunch of cardio until we basically puked. And then I remember at the end of it, there was this guy, Apache, old school guy. And he was sitting there and he barely spoke. He didn't speak any English, and we just did moonsaults. He just taught me how to do moonsaults for like an hour. So this older gentleman just doing moonsault after moonsault. I just gave him all the credit in the world. So yeah, it's different per country. It's not as hostile, and a lot more people appreciate a lot more in the other countries. I think people are trying to be individuals here in the United States, and they want to be a center of attention as a fan, whereas in other countries they want to enjoy it for the product that it is.
All right. You got anything else, Doug?
No, I'm good to go.
Marcus, did you have anything else?
I'm good.
Awesome.
All right. Well, was there anything that we didn't talk about that you was wanting to talk about, Mark?
No, just I appreciate you guys, wanting and caring enough to be able to give me a call to let me kind of tell some stories and talk to you guys and give my perspective on things. And I hope that everybody out there who's supporting you guys enjoyed it and it wasn't a waste of their time.
No, I think it was great.
Oh, yeah, I know I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I did. Definitely.
Perfect.
Well,
I really appreciate
And
it.
hopefully,
I heard you do your interview with
Hopefully
Reggie, and I'm like, we need to get him on ours because I listened to you and Reggie. I thought he's got stories. That's when I told the guys that we need to bring you on. So,
I'll tell you more. And what I'll do is I'll go back and kind of go through my brain, and I'll put some together, and maybe I'll come back on with you at some point quick, and we'll do road stories, and we'll give the PG road story versions.
he's got to pick them out first.
Yeah, I'll censor them. I'll figure out how to censor them. I'll write them all down, and then we'll come back on and we can do a quick 15-20 minute, and I'll just tell you some stories because there's some good ones. I just have to figure out how to reword them.
No. Hopefully it works out, and we'll get to see you see you around here again here before too long.
It should be. I mean, it's one of those things where just keep talking to some of the promoters out there. I know I'm going to keep talking to Joey, and what I'm going to try to do, to be very honest with you, is see if I can figure out a weekend where there's 3 or 4 shows, and then talk to all the promoters and see what we can do about just getting me out there and working together. And then I just help out because I want to be able to continue to run seminars and help even with commentary or anything, and work on shows and do anything I can to help the product move forward.
Sounds great.
All right. We appreciate everybody watching. Please hit that subscribe button on YouTube at Gonzo Sports Room. Like and follow Facebook, Twitch, Twitter, Instagram on Gonzo Sports Room as well. Hope you guys enjoyed.
Yes, go support.
Thank you. And we will see you guys next week.
Thank you guys very much. I appreciate it.
Love ya.
Love you too.
That'd be absolutely devastating.
Here, this is Joey Owens show. They've been trying to get me on this broadcast forever, and this is the worst damn podcast I've ever been on. So you all can kiss my ass while I